Hi everyone, it's Ray with the education team for Swirlydoos Kit Club, and welcome to my tutorial on how to make resin snowflakes out of stamps, which you can see right here. And I'm going to be putting those on these magic boxes, these gift boxes. So stay tuned. So before I show you how to mold the stamps, I thought I would share my experience with the mold putty and resin to hopefully save you some trouble and learn from my mistakes, because I did make plenty. So I started out with making a mold of this ornament, and it came out pretty well. I was excited about that, but I didn't really have a lot of little trinkets that I wanted to make. I thought I would try to do something else, and I thought that I would make a little poinsettia or a flower out of beads and a button. But what I didn't do, and I should have, is I should have glued this all together and made it one piece, because when I put it on here you can see that I was pushing it around, and if I pushed too hard then it was slipping, and it just looked like a disaster. I didn't even bother to waste any of the resin because I'm pretty sure that would not have looked good. So then I thought, I want to use stamps because you can use that image because it's yours. And I thought that it might look nice because they would be thin and flat and would fit well on pages and cards and stuff. So the first one I did is I used this stamp from the kit that we got. This is from the embellishment kit this month. And pretty much, here are my mistakes that I made with this. One, I used way too much mold putty. That's just way too much. And when I put it on there, I didn't make sure that it was flat. I put it upside down. I had the stamp on a acrylic block, and I put it on there and I casted it like that. But when you turn it over, it doesn't go evenly. And so as I was putting the resin in there, you can see that it didn't have this part filled up and it was already overflowing. So I knew this was a piece of junk. I ruined that. So what I learned from that is that I need to have less putty and it needs to be flat on the bottom. So the next time I did it is I used a stamp from the kit again. It's this Merry Christmas one. And I put the stamp on the acrylic block, and then I pushed it into the putty this time. And I thought, alright, this is going to look so awesome. And I pulled it out and I said, oh, look at the detail! And it does look really nice too. And then I took it out and I thought, what's wrong here? Well, you can't use any stamps that have words on them because they come out backwards. So that was pretty disappointing, and I kind of didn't think about that beforehand. And I thought even further that maybe if I made a mold of this, I don't know why I was thinking that, if I molded this piece that it would come out right, but it didn't do that either, so just learn from my mistakes for those. But what I did learn is that you can use images with the stamps, and you do the same sort of technique. You put it on the acrylic block, and excuse my messy block, it's just the way that it is. I never clean them. And then I push it into the putty, and this is the result that I got. It's very thin, and it looks great. So I'm going to show you how to make one of those right now. And I have a couple of tricks that I think everybody should know. A lot of people are saying that they don't have problems with the casting resin, but I do, and so I'm just going to wear gloves because I had a horrible time trying to get this stuff off of my hands. So before I even start, I'm going to put some gloves on. And I'm going to use this larger snowflake stamp. So I guess I didn't need to put the gloves on yet, but I'm going to get out my putty. Like I said, I really didn't need to use the glove for this part, and it really does only take about a minute. So it's pretty flat. I'm gonna make it kind of the same size. And then I'm just going to push down. Okay, so that needs to sit for a few minutes. And while that's sitting, I'm going to put some casting resin in the other smaller one so you can see how it will work. And you just use equal parts of this. After you've got equal parts, you just mix it together. I lost my popsicle stick, so I'm just going to use this. And you just keep stirring until it becomes clear, and it's going to feel a little warm in your hands. And as soon as you feel it warm, you need to put it into the mold. So I'm not going to pour it directly in. I'm actually going to use a syringe. This is a medical grade syringe. I think you can get these at the drugstore. And the reason why I'm going to use this syringe is because I don't want a lot. I don't want any overflow on it. I could sand any excess off on the back, but this way is just a lot easier. It's more precise, and there's less bubbles this way too. Just going to drip it in there. And that looks good. And as soon as it starts to turn white, you can take it out as soon as it's completely white. So I've put my molds aside to dry. I'm going to move on to the next part of my project. I'm actually going to use those molds on a magic gift box, and it's going to go on there looking very similar to this. So I first got the idea of this gift box by stumbling on it on scrapbook.com. There was somebody who had made one of these boxes, and it just looked amazing, and I PM'd her and I said, hey, where did you get the instructions for that box? And she said, oh, I found it on some sort of a website. And she said, I can't remember the name of it, but I actually found it myself, and I found it on a blog by Leah Killian, and you can go to leahkillian.com. So she invented this, not me, but she has a really fantastic tutorial on how to make a box that looks like this. It's tall. I've adapted it. This is one I've made before. It's tall. It's 6 inches tall. And I've adapted it. I've made it smaller, so it's 4.5 inches. It's the same diameter though. So let me show you what it takes to make these boxes. It's very simple. So this is the papers that I use from the Nutcracker, which come inside the Technique kit, and it's pretty basic inside. There are 3 little boxes, and you can put whatever you want in there. My idea is to put maybe some candies or cookies or whatever, and then I made this little slip here, and you can put a little sentiment in there if you'd like, or I actually made it to fit exactly for a gift card. So if you're giving away gift cards but you don't want to just put it inside of a little envelope, this is a really good way to do it. I think it's much more classy than giving it inside of a little aluminum box that you can get at Michael's or something. So there's that one. And you want to keep the inside pretty basic. You don't want to add a lot of chunky things because it needs to close and fit flat. So that's why it doesn't look so decorative inside, but on the outside you can pretty much do whatever you want. So these are the little resin pieces. And that's the top of the box. The top can be as decorated as heavily as you'd like. And here's another one I made using the Nutcracker sweet paper from the Tech Kit again. Okay, so here's how I made these boxes. I'm going to use some paper from the main kit this time because I've used all of my Nutcracker paper. And to get started, if you want to follow along with me, what you're going to need is one sheet of paper that is 4.5 inches tall and 11 3/4 wide. So you just cut a 1/4 inch off of the end of one of these papers and you're good to go. And that is actually this part of the box. It's your base. So the next part is to build little boxes, and these are all the same. You build 4 total. One of them is going to be your lid. The lid is 8.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and the 3 little boxes that go inside are 8 by 8. So I made a couple just to save time. I'm actually going to be using a border punch too to go on the outside. And this is so simple. So I'm going to start with this sheet of paper, and here's what you need to do. It's basically origami. Here's the 8 by 8 piece of paper. You need to you need to draw lines from both ends, and these need to be exact. There's not a lot of wiggle room with this, so I would suggest using something straight, either a piece of paper or a ruler, and making sure that the ink gets right into the corner. If you don't, then your boxes are going to look lopsided. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold each one of these corners up into the point of the intersecting lines right there. And it's almost as if you were making an envelope. So that's the first part. That's what you should have. And then you're going to take each one of these points and take it up to the triangle on the opposite side, to that flat edge right there. And I like to lift the paper up a little bit just to make sure that I'm getting it right there on the line. So I've got all of my folding done, so I can start cutting. I'm going to use this other sheet of paper that I've already marked up so that you can see exactly where I'm going to be cutting. So you're just going to start by picking any side. It doesn't matter what side, but when you start with that side, you've committed. And so you're going to start by cutting out one of these triangles. So now that you've committed to that, you've got to do the one that's on the other side just like that. So you're making a big flap. And you do the same thing on the opposite side. On both sides. At this point, you're cutting nothing else off, but you are going to make some cuts. Cut along these lines. You don't have to draw these lines on if you don't want to. I don't, but this is just to make sure that I am showing you exactly what needs to be cut. So I cut all the way up to the line. But I'm not cutting anything off. So basically I've made tabs, and these are going to be my walls. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this part up. To make sure that they're all even, and they are. If they aren't and they're dipping into this box part right here, this square, then you need to trim some of them off. So it looks good, and I'm ready to start folding. So I'm going to pull up these tabs like this, and then I'm going to take this larger flap and put it over those two tabs. I want to make sure those two tabs are standing straight, that they're not getting folded at any point in time. And then it's going to look like that. I'm just going to take my fingernail and make it smooth in there. And of course that's not going to stay just yet. I'm going to do the same exact thing on the other side, pulling these tabs in, lifting up on this one, and pushing it in again. And it's not going to stay yet, but it will once I push these other two tabs in. When I get done, I do like to take my finger in there to make it as straight as possible, and so I should have the camera the other way for a left-handed point of view. And just do it like that. So I know I like to see things twice before I actually do them myself, so I left this one out so you can see it again, and this time it's without the lines. So I choose my triangle, and I cut that out. And now I'm committed to where the rest of the cuts are going to go. Do it on the other side. Then I make my slits into where the square, the bottom of the box, is going to be. Making the tabs. And then I'm going to do it again. Checking to make sure that they're all even. Looks like when I fold up, nothing's overlapping or lacking. And so I'm ready to pull up my tabs. Take the large flap, put it over, and making a crease at the top, and creasing it down at the bottom to where it looks like that. Doing the same thing with the tabs on the other side. Really make sure those tabs are staying down. Mine's kind of trying to flip over, so try to keep it straight. There we go. And with the boxes like this, you do not need any sort of glue. It will stay the way that it is. If you wanted to, you could stick another piece of paper over there if you wanted to make it a little more decorative. This is good enough for me. I'm not going to do anything else with it. But it's not going to need anything else. No need for glue. So now that we have our boxes, we've got these 3 for the inside. This is the lid. And this is the outside. We have a couple more folds to make and then we'll be ready to ink and assemble. And this one is super easy. This is the 4.5 by 11 3/4. And all you're going to do is fold it in half. You want to line it up as perfect as you can, otherwise the box will be lopsided. And then I'm going to fold each one of these corners into the middle. Not corners, fold each one of the ends up into the middle. And now I'm ready to assemble my box. So just to show you exactly what's going on, this is going to be the box, and we're going to stick these on. But first, let's ink them. Okay, so I've inked all of my parts. I've used chalk ink. You can use whatever ink you want. If you like the distress inks and you want to use the blending tool, you can do that. I like the look of the chalk ink. It's just a personal preference. So at this point, everything's ready to be assembled. And in order to get the best stick on here, you need to use a liquid glue. I don't have much experience with other glues. I found Zip Dry and I love it, so that's what I'm going to use. I wouldn't use Fabri-Tac just because of the fact that I do want a little bit of wiggle room in here when I am sticking the boxes on here. If it doesn't get on there perfectly the first time, with Zip Dry you do have a little bit of time to kind of move it around and get it exactly where you want it to go. The Fabri-Tac I find doesn't really work like that, so Zip Dry it is. And I think I want them to go like that. So it makes no difference what side, you just pick one. And I should have cleaned out my Zip Dry before I got started. Excuse me. Okay. So I want to use this one first. I'm going to take one side and not douse it, but I'm going to put a heavy coat on there. And the other good thing about using Zip Dry with something like this too is that if you do accidentally put a little too much glue on there, you can just rub it and it will come off. So you line this up exactly at the top and on the edge. The corner needs to be exact. You don't need to see any of this bottom sheet at all. And like I said, with the Zip Dry, I do have a little bit of wiggle room here. Figure out where I want it to be. That looks good. I'm going to hold it there for just a sec. I think that's good, and I did get a little more glue than I wanted to on there, so I can just rub that and it'll come right off on the surface. Okay, so the first box is easy to do because you're just lining it up with that corner right there. The second box is going to take a little bit of concentration. It does need to be exact. There's no way to get around that. Okay, a little less on there this time. And here is what your guide is. The top box is your guide first. And that's lined up pretty well. And the other thing that you want to do is you want to be able to lift the rest of the box up just to check to make sure that it's going to close properly and that it's even. So that looks good. commit to that. Press it down for just a sec. And then I'm going to adhere my last box. Now this one has a pattern on it that is kind of upside down depending on which way it goes. I don't want it to look upside down, so I'm going to pick that one. And again, the next guide is pulling it up together to make sure that those sides are even. We definitely don't want it poking out of the bottom of the box, and we want it to be able to close without it looking completely sideways or off. That looks good. Hold this down for just a minute. And while those are drying, I'm going to add something to this last flap. I want to add a gift card holder, and here's how I'm going to do it. This is a sheet of paper that is 4 inches by 3.5, and what I've done is I've taken the top part, I just picked the top, and I used a border punch, and then I also scored a 1/2 inch on both of the sides and on the bottom. And then I'm going to take pair of scissors and cut off these little squares because we do want to make it as thin as possible in there. The more bulk you have, the less likely your box is going to close nicely. So cut off these 2 squares, and these are scored. You want to put the sides on first, and then you want to put 2 dots of glue where it's going to line up with those parts that are already scored. Now you don't want to put glue all along the bottom because then it's going to glue to the inside of the pocket, and then it's not going to be able to hold a card. It will, but it will kind of stick out of the top. We don't want that. So now it's time to glue this to the box, and this is where you put the glue on the scored part only. Got that. I think I got a little too much on there. And then I'm going to stick it in the middle of the rectangle. I want a little bit more room peeking out, but it's in the middle of this flap right here. And it will be perfect for one of those tags that comes in the main kit. In there right like that. And I don't have a gift card, but I have an insurance card, and you can see it's the same size as all credit cards and gift cards, and it just sticks in there just like that. It's a nice little way to give a gift. So this is the basic formation of the box, and now I'm going to embellish it. So I'm ready for the best part of the project, and that is to embellish the box. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them at the bottom of the YouTube, or you can go onto the website at swirlydoos.com and find the Ask the Designers section, and I will be happy to answer any of your questions, as will all of the other designers. So thanks for watching. If you haven't already purchased the December 2012 kit, you need to go to the store and do so. Thanks for watching.